update on my status with Global Force Wrestling. If folks have been following on Twitter and following on the internet, they see that the location of Bound for Glory has been changed 2,000 miles to the north, and that I have announced that I've bowed out as the corporate consultant for Global Force or Impact Wrestling. I'm not going to knock anybody today, but it's funny because it's me. Because I told you before we went on the air, Stace has been wandering around the house really all weekend, just looking at me, just going, I told you, I don't know why you do this to yourself. You bring it on yourself. You're miserable, whatever. You bring it on yourself, and it's because I do everything I can to eliminate stress, turmoil, drama, anxiety from my life. When I got in the Jim Cornette business and out of the wrestling business, I achieved a lot more calm and serene outlook. You can testify to this, at least in comparison.
In comparison.
Well, there you go. See, you've validated what I've said. Because I stay away from the turmoil and the stress and the pressure of the wrestling business. I'm in the Jim Cornette business. But then I make a slight detour back into the wrestling business, and she's like, you brought it on yourself. And I do rib myself from time to time, because when I do dally in wrestling, sometimes it becomes a rib on me. And this is not a knock on the company or anybody in it. And as I said, I had a fine time. Well, we ought to go chronologically, because there have been updates on past, 3 or 4 weeks programs?
At least, yeah.
And every week we've had just a little tweak in things. And to be honest, at first I didn't come right back from the tapings in August in Orlando and immediately announced I was going to be at Bound for Glory, because we had 3 months of TV in the can. I thought, well, I'll let them announce it. I'm not going to expose the promotions business. So I didn't announce I was going to be at Bound for Glory until the office sent me that graphic. I mean, we actually ought to make T-shirts out of these. It's a cool graphic. My picture is a Jim Cornette, Bound for Glory, 11/5/17, whatever the case. So that's okay. I'll tell people I'm going to be at Bound for Glory, because obviously now they want to advertise it. It's not a surprise. That's when I announced I would be. But let's go chronologically. I was sitting here minding my own business. I sound like an eyewitness to a axe murder. I was sitting here minding my own business, officer. And so the phone rang, and I've revealed a lot of this on the YouTube bulletins and on the podcast. But like I said, I'll try to, for brevity's sake, we'll go through this. The phone rings, and it's Jeff Jarrett. And I had mentioned at the time, I don't believe I revealed his name, but Jeff Jarrett's a minority owner of Impact Wrestling or Global Force Wrestling, or he's a minority owner of the company, and he's the executive in charge of wrestling operations. So he contacts me and asked me to come down and do what I did, which was address certain issues that affected the Global Force Championship and the talent roster and all the stuff that I've been doing on television that you've been seeing, and will continue for the next 6 weeks or so to see. More to come, folks. Keep watching. And I told him I'd taken, and Brian, and also it's my fault because I tried to take a vacation. What happens every time I say I'm going to take 3 months off the road? Have I ever taken that fucking 3 months off the road yet?
No, you certainly haven't.
Because people find out I'm trying to, and then he says, are you available? I said, well, technically I'm available because I've taken these 3 months off on purpose, but it's a week, down in Florida, and I've made the trip. I'm familiar with the area. Nice little hotel I stay down there. And also, to be quite honest, I've known Jeff since he was 12 years old, and I've talked about that before. And except for the one choice of guy that he, had working for him also, I've always had a pleasant experience. And if somebody was going to turn the wrestling company around, I believe this guy might be the guy to do it. And also, to be quite honest, since I was there, when last I was there, I left under false pretenses because of, Dixie and Russo, I'll call them douchebag and dumbass when they're together in the same place, had made up, a bunch of shit to babyface themselves. So they lied about me on the way out. So I thought I will like to go in and see all of my old friends, the people that I liked working with, help the television program, help Jeff out. Okay. And that's what we did. And we provided the updates on the tapings and etc. And the only thing is when I made the deal, I said, now look, I said, I'm not looking for anything full time with anybody. And I don't know about making that trip on a regular basis because I'm not as spry as I used to be in my younger days. And Jeff said, let's just get to Bound for Glory, because that's 3 months of television, right? So fine. So on the last day of the tapings, I will admit, because I'm still running the place on camera, I did go to Jeff and say, well, I'm not going out in an ambulance today, boss. So I apparently need to come back. And of course, because that same thing he did to me last time. First time I went there, it was supposed to be part-time in the summer, just taping every now and then. But anyway, so we sat down real briefly, and she said they were coming back on November 5th. And I said, can you get me in and out in 4 days max? He said, maybe 3. I said, great, we'll work it out. And that's why I announced I was going to be at Bound for Glory, and we were negotiating on a number of days for TV. Because that's when I shook his hand on that at the last day of taping in August is the last communication I've had with Jeff. Because I came home and everybody seemed to be quite pleased with everything and proud of themselves. And then it was 10 days later, whatever it was, I read on the internet, obviously, that he's taking a leave of absence. And at that point, which was a surprise to obviously, I called somebody in the company I've known for 40 years. I won't mention any names. And said, what's a gig here? And he had just found out about it himself and didn't know any more at that point than I did. So I said, well, obviously I'm on the team now. So whatever you guys need. Because what else are you going to say, right? And then I didn't hear it. About a week later, I happened to be speaking to Bob Ryder because he does handle financial paperwork and reimbursements on the hotel, blah, blah, blah. And they travel. He does everything. He's like the Buddy Sorrell, the human joke machine. It's Bob Ryder, the human wrestling paperwork machine. And while I was talking to him, I said, whoever is, because now they're talking about a new creative team or whatever. I said, whoever is, in charge of the creative, let them know that since obviously this is not what I signed up for, and I'm not married to anything, and I was just guest starring, but now they are painted into the corner of me running their company on television. I said, let the creative team know I'll be happy to finish up something in Orlando to tie up their story or the issue, or I can continue on if they want to. But, since I'm finding out most of this stuff on the internet, my enthusiasm is waning, which, is something that happens to me every once in a while. Okay. And then the next big bombshell was that they were going to move the location of Bound for Glory, which I'd agreed to appear at. And one thing, the graphic, it said Jim Cornette, Bound for Glory in the date, but it didn't say where. So they did leave a loophole. Of course, when I agreed to it, it was in Orlando, Florida, in the place we were sitting in. Yeah, I've had people switch buildings, like in Cincinnati. We're not going to be at the riverfront. We're going to be at the Cincinnati Gardens. Or I've even had people switch like days in a tour of a double shot. Well, Friday, we're not going to be in Detroit. We're going to be in Toledo. I've never had anybody change the country on me. So this is uncharted territory. I mean, 40 years in the wrestling business. I've never agreed to be somewhere on a date and have the show move to a different country. So, but I didn't know this then. I read on the internet, a location is being changed, will be announced, because this was late last week when that came out, right? As we tape here. By the time the people heard it, it was about a week ago, this news came out that they were changing the location. Anyway, so I'm like, now they're changing the location. I don't know. And I have instigated every communication to anybody in the company so far since the taping that I've had. I've instigated it. And I don't have time to be an instigator anymore. I got shit going on, right? I'm limiting my instigation practicing. But so I called my friend of 40 years and I said, they're changing the location. Where is it now? And he gave the first words out of his mouth were, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I laughed. I said, my graceful exit. And I just blew boogers, because what more could possibly, it's any time that I'm going to be involved it's going to be a rib on me. And so I said, I'll be happy to come down to Nashville and tape something. If you announce that I've got the Bolivian tsetse virus, I'm going to be in a body cast in a hospital in fucking Peru for 6 months or whatever. But once again, I'm not mad at anybody in the company, and I wish them all well. I talked about how much I love the production crew, and I talked about I've got a number of favorites and ex-students and ex-employees on the crew in the talent roster, and I had a positive experience. But regardless, and I'm certainly not going to ask them not to tape in the country they want to tape in just so I can show up. I didn't intend for this to be long term and was kind of peacefully minding my own business when this happened anyway. But to be honest, also, I can't. I don't have the patience that I used to have when I was younger for turmoil and reading things on the internet that I'm finding out. I've never had the place that I was working for move out of the country underneath me and me find out about it on the internet. So, but anyway, and I mean, it's just ludicrous. It's stuff that only happens to me. Maybe I cursed them. I think I jinxed them. But they're fine folks. But I'm going to re-retire here as a authority figure, and I'm retiring at WrestleCade. More on that later as a manager, and I'm going to systematically try to chip away at some of these things. But one of the morals of the story is, as the immortal Bobby the Brain Heenan used to say, a friend in need is a pest. Don't answer your phone in the wrestling business. Don't pick up the phone when people call. Don't call them back, because they're going to try to book you. And as Bobby Eaton said one time, the most dangerous 3 words in professional wrestling in the locker room are, I've got TV. and then big once, and it's like I said, I wish all of them the best, and I hope the company prospers. But and I just really, like I said, I just bopped in to do a thing. But it's always, anytime I get involved in a wrestling company, even if I just am calmly standing in the background, there's going to be some turmoil somewhere. It's going to cause me stress. And the Canada, and I wanted to, because there was some people going, well, what the fuck? What did he do to not to be able to go to Canada? Let me rectify, if I can, my current legal status. Have we talked about this? We've talked about the incident, but I don't think people think like I can't go to Canada if I want to. The thing was, when they stopped me and decided to fucking treat me like a goddamn international drug cartel fucking captain and fucking harass us in the prison camp that they established on the border there, on the dividing line between our country and the Great White North. They told me when they finally had decided to say, no, you got to go home. And I said, fine, let me out of here. Here's a piece of paper. You've got to sign this, which is your agreement that you will not come back to Canada. And that's when I zoned out. When they said, until you fill out application Zabada and file it into Form Snurberderberderman and then have it approved by Peanut's parents, wah, 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 wah. And I said, give me that piece of paper. That will be the easiest promise I ever make. Boom, sign it. I said, thank you. We're done with this procedure for the rest of my life. So Gary Juster in Ring of Honor, because we ran Toronto, and Toronto's a great wrestling town. And as a matter of fact, I championed and put together the card for the first Border Wars there at the Ted Reeve that sold out 1,500 plus and was supposed to be the huge coming out internet pay-per-view for Ring of Honor with Lance Storms on it, Rhinos on it, every top Ring of Honor star is on it. There's more, it's talents all over the place. Blank screen for fucking 3 hours. The show was great. Anyway, he said he let the Sinclair attorneys just file this paperwork or whatever the fuck. You won't even have to pay for it, because I've talked to people that have done the thing, and it's a couple grand or whatever it is. And I said, there's no sense in wasting the attorney's time, because I don't intend, whether I have an engraved invitation, to ever cross that border again and subject myself to the availability of being talked to and treated, etc., in that fashion. So we will remain separate but equal, Canada and myself. And I don't need the fucking paperwork. So technically, it's not like I robbed a bank, folks, and am a convicted felon and spent time in the big house. But there is paperwork I could get, but I do not have. It's been almost 10 years, and nothing has happened in my life that would motivate me to instigate that paperwork, and I cannot foresee that happening in the near or distant future either. Because whether you got the paperwork or not, they can still treat you the same way. Have you ever gone up there and they've done that thing to you?
Oh no, I had a great wild time in Montreal, and everyone left me alone. It was really terrific.
But well, no, I don't. Once you get in there, it's fine. I'm talking about the border. Have you ever had one of the fuck up? I mean, every wrestler or person in the wrestling business has a story about the Canadian border that they have fucked with you in some kind of way. Even the nice people, even the people with no records, they fuck with people at random. Have they ever fucked with you?
No, and I've been up there a bunch of times. Everyone's been very polite and gentlemanly and send me off on my way.
Well, that's because you don't look like a wrestler.
Maybe so. Shouldn't it be Continental Force, not Global Force?
But wait, it's not Global Force now, because you've heard about this. Because over the way, so let me get back to my chronological expedition.
Yes,
I told my old friend, "Thank you, I'll bow out, I'll do whatever." Because that was over the weekend. And then on Monday, they announce that it's going to be in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, which then I'm deluged on Twitter, and I've got people emailing me. And there's the people, oh, can you go? Or you can't go, or whatever the fuck. It's where I've got to deal with more, because I have enough emails already, and we're quite active on the Twitter without having to deal with all of this. Speculation. I had a seamless, drama-free time working a week in a row with their TV tapings, and now that I'm in my own home, I'm getting deluged with this shit. So at any rate, that's when they announced on Monday they were going to be in Ottawa, and now people are speculating, well, Cornette's going to be fired. I can't be fired. I was never hired. I've never even signed a contract. We have parted as friends. Nobody's yelling at anybody. And I think that Danny Glover said it best when he said, I'm too old for this shit. I'm coming back off the road. I'm coming back to the castle, sewing up my cocoon, and leaving the wrestling business as it exists in the 21st century to the folks that have more patience.
When I saw that tweet, that, Bound for Glory will be in Canada, I started laughing. And all I kept hearing in my head over and over again was you plugging the Detroit convention and saying, you're in Canada. This is the closest I'm getting to Canada. Come see me here.
Yes, well, it still is, folks. So, but I do encourage the folks to listen to us on the Experience, but watch me for the next 6 weeks on Pop TV, on Impact Wrestling, because we did some good stuff. And if you like the show, then I encourage you to continue watching it after that. It's just I'm not going to be on it. And and that's what I think about that.